good. It was good. We had
Come sit in the
we
front.
had a good singer last night here, which was nice.
You guys.
First night we were at my.
Rach, come over here so you won't have to walk so far.
I heard you were at. All right, what do you think?
I'm ready whenever you
Shabbat shalom, everybody.
are. Shabbat shalom.
Oh, we lost camera.
Oh yeah, there it is, unplugged. Did it come out of the back too? There it is. Oops.
Shabbat shalom. So it sounds like we still got a crew coming in outside, so they'll filter in as they do. So I'll do my more formal announcement in a moment. But hopefully everybody on their way in has grabbed a prayer book. If you haven't, you can find them right up to the side. And we're going to begin with the words Shalom Aleichem. We're on page 24.
Shalom Shalom
Lechem
Aleichem,
Malachei
Malachei
Asharet,
Malachei
Malachei
Elyon,
Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem Malachei Asharet, Malachei Elyon,
Melech Malchei Hamlachim,
HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem Malchei Asharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's hear you. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I hope people had wonderful Seders, and Passover is very much upon us now. And we find ourselves in a period, the Shabbat, that actually begins what's called Chol HaMoed. So the first 2 days of the 8 days of Passover and the last 2 days of the 8 days of Passover are considered holy days. And we just finished the first set. And Chol HaMoed literally in Hebrew means the appointed special everyday time, which is a way kind of a paradox, right? On the one hand, this period from day 3 through day 6 of Passover, we also have one other time throughout the year where that happens during Sukkot, is both has a heightenedness to it like a holiday, and at the same time is just like every other day, which means that when Shabbat falls on that holiday time, there are a few little changes. We change, for example, the Torah portion in the morning, which we are going to chant. There's an addition or two in your Amidah prayer, but for the most part, it's just a regular old Shabbat. It's a regular old Shabbat where we bless maybe some matzah instead of some challah, but it brings with it the same kind of mandate that Shabbat does, which is pausing, resting, introspection, searching for holiness, and community. And so hopefully you can take this time almost as a reprieve from what the heightenedness of the past 2 days have been. Whenever you're around family, whenever you're around friends, whenever there's big celebrations, there's usually a lot of big emotions too. Shabbat is a time to kind of let those go. And especially Shabbat of Chol Moed is a time to return to at least a semblance of normalcy. Not full normalcy, because Shabbat is anything but normal, but to kind of rediscover what you get 52 other chances in the course of the year to do. And so in a moment, we're going to usher in Shabbat with the lighting of our candles, but a few logistical announcements before we begin. So if you need large print prayer books, they're on your way in to the left. If you need hearing assisted devices, they're through the office to the right. Larry Rosenthal is our usher this evening, and so if you need anything, you can ask him. Make sure that you've got prayer books with you, and if you need bathrooms, they're outside to the right. They'll all gender and handicap accessible bathrooms are through the office and to the left. And if for some reason you need any kind of emergency exit, of course there's the exit you came in, but notice there's an exit here behind the piano, and also if you walk through those doors, there's an exit into the back as well. Finally, if you see someone who's lost, who doesn't know where they are in the prayer book or on the page, don't be shy about leaning over and telling them and helping them to find their way. I know that we've got a lot of guests here tonight, and so if for some reason you do feel lost, just lean over to the person near you and they'll help you find your way. And know, by the way, that you don't have to be an aficionado in Hebrew to be able to follow along with services. I'll announce the page numbers, and sometimes humming along or clapping along or a simple yababa or bim bim bam is plenty. So with that, we're going to move into the lighting of our candles tonight. And so tomorrow, Rachel will be called up as a bat mitzvah. And in honor of that, I'm going to call her with her brother and her parents to come up to light our candles and to bless our wine tonight. Do you have the prayer book? You're reading. First reading.
Yeah. No? Okay. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, lehadlik ner, Shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
We're on page number 5.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinhilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehila l'mikrae kodesh zeher litziat mitzrayim Kivanu vaharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim
Shabbat kodshcha be'ahava uratzon hinchaltanu.
Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim.
We move forward in actually, before we do that, tonight is the first night that we're going to be on Friday night counting the Omer. And so it's become our clergy associate Ronnie Pressman's sacred task each week during the 7 weeks of Omer to count. And so I'm going to turn things over to her to explain what we are doing and why we do it each week.
Thanks. So Matt's going to put up some screens, and he has the cues, so he knows when we're going to switch. Sfirat HaOmer. It's the time when we do some counting. And that piece that's on the left is an art piece by Toby Kahn. It's made of blocks of wood. And what really I imagine is as we count each day, and I know that you take the pieces out and then you put them down, then you put them back in the next day and take out the second until you go through all of them. 7 weeks, that's 49, and one more day, Shavuot. So we're actually counting the days in this building block as markers. There we go. So I'm going to ask you to join together with me with this piece that says that we are ready to fulfill. It's not that I'm ready to fulfill, it's that we are really. So we'll read the Hebrew, and if you can't read the Hebrew, there's translate underneath it. Join me. Hineni muchan u'mezuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel Sfirat HaOmer. And instead of saying I, say we. We are ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. The bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu al Sfirat HaOmer. And we count the days as we move along, and we talk about this thing called Sfirah. And Sfirah can come from 3 roots, 3 different shorashim in Hebrew. One of them, mispar, which means numbers. Matt, you could go to the next one right there. Perfect. The second translation for it, sipur, means telling a story. And the third one, sapir, means a sapphire stone that's translucent, that's a crystal that shines brightly. This counting helps us illuminate the aspects of our emotional levels. The days of the Sfirah tells us a story, the story of our souls. Hayom Shnei Yamim La Omer. Today is 2 days of the Omer. Givurah Sheb Chesed, strength of character. The thematic piece for this week is Chesed, with loving kindness. What we have is something that's paired with other characteristics each day. And as we pair them, we move on this week, tonight actually, strength of character with loving kindness. Healthy love must include an element of discipline and discernment, a degree of distance and respect for another's boundaries, an assessment of another's capacity to contain your love. Love must be tempered and directed properly. With each of these descriptors comes a challenge. Here's our challenge for today. Recognize a need in someone you love and do your best to meet that need. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. So we're going to move now forward in our prayer book. We're on page 20 as we sing the words of L'chadoti.
L'chadoti likrat kala yanalai 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 b'nei Shabbat tekabelai yairai.
Clap with your hands, yeah.
L'chadoti likrat kala yanalai 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 b'nei Shabbat tekabelai. Shamor v'zachor ודיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו תפארת ולתחילה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. ידי ידי לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה.
Let's hear you.
לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. ידי ידי לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה.
Verse 5. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. ידי ידי לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. We rise together facing the door.
בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, לך דודי יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה. ידי ידי לך דודי לקראת קלה, יללה יללה יללה, בני שבת נקבלה.
We remain standing. We move into the Baruch Hu, page 28, but I want to invite us to turn our eyes to the screen as well for an opening meditation.
Yada-dai-dai-dai, 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 yada-dai-dai-dai. Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Yada-dai-dai-dai, 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 yada-dai-dai-dai,
Yada-dai-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai-dai, yada-dai-dai-dai.
We're seated together. Invite us to turn to page 31, top of that page. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way in which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch ata Adonai, Hama'ariv Aravim.
Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha ahavta, Amcha ahavta. Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu lemadata, otanu lemadata. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu b'shokbeinu ufkumeinu nasiach b'chukecha v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed ki hem chayenu b'orech yameinu Uvahem nege yomam v'layla, nege yomam v'layla. V'ahavatcha al tasir, mimenu le'olamim. Baruch ata Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael, ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 34.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'otecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uktavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'tem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem Emet.
In a moment, we're going to turn to page 40 and we're going to sing Mi Chamocha. But it's interesting to ask, when in the Jewish calendar did we actually sing this particular song? We know it's the song that the Israelites sang when they crossed the sea to freedom, but when exactly did that happen? Well, the way to understand this is to ask the question, well, what does Passover actually commemorate? And the answer is, Passover itself, that first night, commemorates not our freedom, but it actually commemorates God having the angel of death passing over the houses of the Jewish people. It's the 10th plague is actually the anniversary that we commemorate on that first night of Passover. Our freedom actually happens on the last traditional day. We celebrate an extra day in the diaspora, but on the 7th day of Passover, when the Jews walked through parted waters to freedom and sang Mi Chamocha. And so if you come to our festival services toward the end of Passover, that's actually what is being celebrated. In a way, it's almost more joyous as we move throughout those days of Passover. Now, the reason I bring this up is because the Jews hadn't yet sung this song in the kind of cosmic time that we are reliving, being at the start of the third day of Passover. But it doesn't mean that this song wasn't in their hearts. There's something about creativity that I have to imagine that it's not just a spontaneous process, but it's a series of little things that are building up over the course of our lives that eventually, when the creative process happens, they manifest into something big. Which means in the mouth of Moses and Miriam, who each sang this song, one has to imagine that there are pieces of Mi Chamocha within, ready to come out only a few days later. And so we joyously sing this song, knowing that this is going to be the song that the Israelites sing after they've crossed the sea in only a few days. Page 40.
Do you want to say something about the melody?
Sure, the melody is a familiar Passover melody that you'll know.
Mi Chamocha Ba'elim Adonai, Mi Chamocha Nedar B'Kodesh, Nora Tehilot Osef Ele Malechutecha Ra'u Banecha Bokei Hayam Lifnei Moshe uMiriam Ze'eli Anu Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. V'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov Ugilzo miyachazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
Page 42 and also our screen.
Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'Chaim. Ashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'Chaim. Ushmor Seitenu Uvoenu L'chaim u'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Sometimes I lay under the moon and I thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play one day.
One day,
One day,
one day,
one day, one day,
one day,
one day,
one day,
one day. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
Page 44.
Yismechu b'malachutecha,
Shomrei, 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 Shabbat
v'korei
Oneg Shabbat.
Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shvi Shabbat. Kulam yismehu v'yitagu v'tuvecha Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi ratzita bo v'kidasho Shabbat. Chemdad yamim Oto karata Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Zecher l'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat. Zecher l'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat. Yismechu b'malachutecha, Shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat.
We're on page 46. I'm going to invite us all to rise. And after this opening meditation, we'll move in silence through page 62.
Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Open my eyes to truth, open my hands to give freely, open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. Adonai sifatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Open my lips to good words, to pure words, open my heart to love. If you're still in the midst of prayer, whether you're on Zoom or you're on YouTube or you're still in our congregation here, we're going to turn back to page 60 because we never close out our prayer without a prayer for peace. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Keep going. Lechol HaShalom
Ki ata hu melech adon. Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. B'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Baruch atah Adonai hamavarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We move ahead in our Siddur to page 253, and I'll ask you to think of names in your hearts and minds when I look around the room that you can add them for the Mishaberach, as well as the people online can put them in the chat. Mishaberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha. Source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Berach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless
refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
So Judaism loves to follow a certain kind of pattern, which is moving liganut l'shevach, in the words of our rabbis describing at least what a Passover Seder is, which is from the low of the slavery to kind of the height of freedom. And so we just moved from praying for healing for those who are in our midst, and now we are going to move to celebration. And so we've got a couple here who are about to be married, and that is going to receive a special blessing tonight. And so Jenny and Nathan, I want to call you up, and I'm going to invite us all to rise. So I had the privilege 2 days ago, or yesterday really, of spending a little bit of time with the two of you. And as I was reflecting on today and the blessing that I was going to give to you today, and I, of course, have actual blessings here in this book, which I'll read in a moment, I was thinking about the fact that the two of you are getting married and have a lot of history with many buildings that have the word Taft in it. You're getting married in the Taft House, for example, as your wedding venue in Cincinnati. And as I was thinking about the character of Taft, because I couldn't help but think about it as we were sitting together, I was thinking about the fact that there is no person in American politics, in all of American history perhaps, who has invented himself over and over again in the same way that he did. He's a person who was Secretary of War and then a president. And when most people would retire after being a president, he decided to become a Supreme Court justice and suddenly became the chief Supreme Court justice. And so he had these movements in his life. And I'm thinking about the two of you and the sacrifices that you're willing to make for each other, the leaps of faith that you're willing to make for each other, the movements that you are having in your life. You're about to enter this new movement of being newly married. But then you have other challenges and other opportunities that already I know you're going to be facing, and many more down the line. It's said that you don't actually have one marriage. You have multiple marriages over the course of your lifetime. And what makes marriages succeed is the ability to change along with the other as your movements move on. And the two of you already, in the short time that I've seen, are a team in such a way that it feels like you've got each other's backs. You've got flexibility. You can move through those movements in life. Your marriage will transform. It will not be the same marriage 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now. But I have faith in the two of you that you can weather the challenges and the differences that are going to happen as life moves along with you, and that you will reinvent your marriage in that same vein. And so as you stand there in that Taft House, know that this is just one piece of your story. And know that over the course of your long love story that is yet to be written, so much more than even that has been in the 5 years you've been together, know that you've got all of the materials to move along on the river of life, moving over each wave seamlessly as you support one another. And so I offer you these words. Misha berach avotenu Avraham Yitzhak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech et hechatan v'et hakala v'yatzliach et darkam asher yalchu ba mehayom v'hala. May God, who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless this bride and this groom. Guide them on life's journey. And may their marriage be a joy and a good example to all who know them. May they fashion a Jewish home worthy of praise, a secure refuge where they find tranquility during all their days together. May the love of the two of you inspire and bless your family and friends and the whole community of Israel. As together we say, Amen. And so I offer you this blessing, and here, come stand in front of the Torah. The oldest blessing that I have to give in our tradition, the priestly benediction. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka. May God cause God's face to shine upon you and give you grace. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God always smile upon you, granting you a life of wholeness and peace. As together we say, Amen. And we sing together. Siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov, siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov, siman tov u'mazel tov u'mazel tov u'siman tov. Hey lanu, yeh lanu, yeh lanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Hey lanu, yeh lanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Yeh lanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Yeh lanu, u'lecho Yisrael. Congratulations. We can be seated. So Shabbat Shalom. I just picked up a book recently, and I'm about probably halfway done with it. And it's a book about Spinoza and Leibniz, who are two of the most important philosophers in kind of the early modern period. And I'm fascinated by Spinoza, not only because, he was excommunicated from his Jewish community in Amsterdam, but also specifically because I go to Amsterdam every year with our 10th graders. I went with Will, actually, this year. And so there's something about his story that feels kind of personal and mine. And so I'm reading this book. It's called The Courtier and the Heretic. And it's talking about the fact that Spinoza was completely taken by surprise by the fact that he writes what he considers to be his kind of magnum opus before he actually wrote his real magnum opus called the Ethics, which is called the Theological Political Treatise. And he thinks that it's so well argued that every single person who hears it suddenly is going to come to his side. They're going to say, you know what? We're enlightened now. Thank you, Baruch Spinoza. I am so glad that you taught me this. I now believe what you believe. Now, if you've never read this book before or heard of this book, it is called literally the most evil book in history by people who are reading it at its time. Because he is the first modern thinker to come out and to try to prove that the Bible was not written by God. He takes issue, and by the way, he builds off of Ibn Ezra, who is one of the more important of the Jewish writers in history, who basically point out in one of his comments at the very beginning of the book of Deuteronomy that, there's some weird things in the Torah that feel to him like Moses couldn't have written it. For example, Moses saying that Moses spoke to the people on the other side of the Jordan. Well, Moses wouldn't have said that standing on the same side of the Jordan with them. But he only points out these strange things. It's Spinoza who takes them to its logical conclusion. And he spends most of the book talking about how things that we take for granted religiously, things like miracles, things like the fact that God wrote the Torah, things like that religion is inherently the religious rituals are inherently good and not just kind of an opiate to the masses to calm them down, to make them feel good about themselves. He takes issue with all of that and creates potentially the most heretical book in the history of Western literature, though prescient because it prefigures much of the rest of the world catching up to him by like hundreds of years. So he writes this book. And he assumes that when people finally pick it up and they read his writing, they're going to jump to his side. because it is a really well-argued book. It's really well-written. He has a lot of biblical quotes in it. His logic seems to hold up. He does a good job explaining. And people over the course of time have. The reason, by the way, that we have in America, the way that we have in America, is in part because he laid the foundations that then people like John Locke jumped on a little bit later and ran with. But he was forlorn about the fact that pretty much in his era, very few people picked up that book and admired his argumentation. Because there's something about their connection to their faith that made it very hard to see his argument with fresh eyes. Now, I have to imagine that the way that Baruch Spinoza was feeling after writing that theological political treatise was also the way that God might be feeling in the days after God splits the sea and frees the Jewish people. In part because the portion that we're supposed to read during Chol HaMoed, during that period of time in the middle of Passover, is a period that is right after the golden calf episode. So if you know Jewish history, the Jewish people leave Egypt, walk through parted waters, are free, wander in the desert for, about 7 weeks or so, which is why we count every day from Passover to Shavuot as we did tonight, end up at the foot of Mount Sinai, receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. By the way, don't just receive the Torah in perhaps the greatest laser light show in the history of the Jewish people. Moses goes up, spends 40 days on top of the mountain, and after all of that, the people get nervous and build an idol and start worshiping that idol. It's the golden calf. You would think, by the way, that God's argumentation was pretty good. You would think that God had laid the foundation. I mean, if the people didn't trust God after they saw 10 plagues, from locusts to frogs to blood to the death of firstborn, if they didn't trust and believe in God after God splits the sea for them, walks them to freedom, closing it up on the Egyptians, if they didn't believe in God and really trust in God by the time that God had literally made a mountain grow on fire as God gave the Torah to the people, I don't know what God could have done. That argumentation was flawless. That was better than anything Baruch Spinoza could have done. But yet the people couldn't leave that fear because people's emotional connection to things actually are what drives our behaviors, not necessarily our logic. One of my professors, David Ellenson, used to use a word, which, by the way, I have yet to Google and find it, even though I've tried to use it before, where he talks about this thing called elective affinity. The idea that there are people who will vote against their own interests because of a kind of emotional connection or ideology. It's the reason that two warring peoples, for example, won't make peace, even though peace would be the logical thing, because they're not willing to give up pieces of their identity, even though the peace is what is called for. And so, as we are considering what we need to do to influence other people, I'm struck by the fact that not even God could get it right. Because the truth is, it's really hard to control for every variable. Yes, if we were automatons, if we were robots, if we simply were moved by the logical answer that A went to B and B went to C and C went to D, we would be able to be moved by any argument that we find. But we are complicated creatures. And the truth is, not even the divine can solve for all of that eternal angst that exists within us. One of my favorite books is War and Peace by Tolstoy. I know I'm talking about really pretentious stuff tonight. And the thesis of that book, even though, like, for the most part, it's, a war story and a love story and all of that, is that the world is too complicated to simply have easy answers, that great men are the reason that history moves in the way it does. And one of the things that he talks about the Napoleonic War in Russia, and how Napoleon basically makes his way all the way to Moscow And you would think, by the way, a great guy like Napoleon, who could solve for everything, would figure out how to make his army not fall apart in the last minute. But it does. He makes it to Moscow. He burns Moscow to the ground. And the next thing you know, the Russian soldiers are beginning to overtake the French, and the French are suddenly fleeing for their lives. And they're sitting ducks, and the Russians are picking them off on their way back as they're marching back to France. And Tolstoy has this really long section at the end where he basically says the reason that this happened is not because of people like Napoleon, not like the Russian generals. It's because history is made through small actions, through little people, through small decisions that you can't catalog in history books. And so suddenly things don't make sense, in part because you just don't have all the information, because you can't control for all of the idiosyncrasies that are your troops, each one individually different. You can't control for the idiosyncrasies that are the townspeople along the way. You can't control for the idiosyncrasies that are the enemy troops. And that each one holding their own elective affinity, holding their own emotional baggage, that's where history is made. That despite Napoleon's best efforts, he was nothing compared to the collective will of the people around him, each of which held their own baggage. Spinoza was nothing compared to people's emotional outbursts when they read a book that told them that everything about their faith was null and void. God was nothing compared to the collective will of those hundreds of thousands of Jews who, despite seeing God reach out with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, still could not shed those feelings of fear and that connection to slavery that just lived on them, that they could not scrub off. Which means that when we are trying to influence people, we are really at a disadvantage. We are no Spinoza, we are no Napoleon, and we are certainly no God. But what we do have that they don't have is the humility to understand that we actually don't have all of the answers. And so whether it's trying to negotiate between your family dynamics over the course of the next few days as you are navigating Passover, or whether it's working kind of in a system in a workplace and trying to control for everything, or whether it's living in a community, or whether it's trying to judge what even the electorate is going to do in America, one of the things that we can understand is that we don't have the answers. But if we take the pulse of where people's emotional truth is, we might just get a little bit closer to being there than thinking about what is right. And so I want to invite us over the course of this next year, as we move from one Passover eventually to the next, to have that humility, to realize that we don't have all the answers, that we cannot control for everything. And that if we are going to solve problems, we need to look at the internal as well as the logical. We need to look in the heart as well as the head. And maybe, just maybe, history might move our way. Shabbat shalom. We're going to turn to page 282 as we rise for Elena.
Aleinu l'shabach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמותיו
Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad. Please be seated. Our thoughts now turn to those who we have loved and who we've lost. And as I recite the name of your loved one, I'll invite you to rise, remaining standing in honor of their memory. This Shabbat, we recall the following yard sites: Ronald Abbott, Henry Abrams, Sidney Ackerman Jr., Esther Keels Baff, Rose Cohen, Neil Robert Elson, Lake Epstein, Thomas Fitzgerald, Yetta Friedman, Clara Gross, Herman Gutman, Phyllis Gutterman, Mark Hoffman, Gary Jacobs, Stanley Jacobson, Harry Canaher, Reza Kallmeyer, Richard Cassell, Rebecca Katz, Milton Keels, Morris Korn, Violet Lavenda, Martha Lazar, Gerald Lankowitz, Phyllis Mallister, Rebecca Marcus, Ann Meyer, Martha Newman, Quentin Palmer, Richard Penny, Erna Reiser, Saul Ring, Leo Schneider, Antonia Schubert, Alice Scholler, Francis Simkowski, Joseph Singman, Burl Sondek, Sarah Spiller, Rose Stelzer, Mary Stolzberg, Hetty Tellerman, Vincent Urzo, Samuel Weistein, Rosalind Wellner, Samson Wiener, and Patricia Woodward. And those who are in their Shiva and Shloshim periods of mourning: William Lawyer, father of Liam Lawyer, Charles Sonneborn, father of Susie Sonneborn. In addition, if you've got a yard site that wasn't on this list, or you are within your 1 year period of mourning for someone, I'll invite you to rise and share their name. Page 294. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad divrach yirtzeh v'yamlech malchuteh, v'chayachon v'yomechon v'chayet l'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'gala v'yisman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitazar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudusha baruchu, le'elam min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, damiram b'yama b'imru amen. Yehi shalom rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'ko Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'ko Yisrael v'imru amen. Please be seated. So before we move into our closing song, just a few announcements. So Passover is still upon us for the next few days, which means, first of all, we've got our Shabbat morning services this coming day tomorrow. And so not only do we have our Torah study at 8:30, but we're going to welcome Rachel to the Bima as she becomes Bat Mitzvah tomorrow morning at 10. In addition, our 8th day Yisker and festival services are going to be Thursday morning at 10 a.m. and then Thursday night, and there's still room for this, and we hope that you'll join us. We're going to be joining with a really wonderful Muslim community that we have a relationship with. It's called Peace Island Institute. It's rare that Ramadan happens to fall on Passover. I think maybe we get one more year. I haven't really looked at the calendar yet. So we last year started this. We're doing it again this year. We are going to be having a break fast for them on the same day that we are breaking Passover with lots and lots of bread products here together. And so join us. It's Thursday night. We hope you can make it, and we'll have a program with them, and it'll be wonderful. In addition to that, a few other things. it actually begins one of our busy seasons in our congregation, in part because there's a bunch of other holidays that follow after Passover, one of which is Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Remembrance Day. That's going to be a few Mondays from now, and that's going to be actually rotates between a Jewish house of worship and a non-Jewish house of worship. This time it's going to be in a Quaker meeting house, and we're going to, as a whole community, join together for Holocaust Remembrance Day. And then not the Wednesday after, but the Wednesday after that is Israel Independence Day. And so we have a Israeli jazz musician, really talented, who's coming to our congregation, who's going to play with his combo, and he's going to kind of do like a night of jazz and storytelling, where he's going to talk about kind of the jazz scene in Israel and how his Israeliness and Jewishness impact his approach to jazz, and how his approach to jazz impacts his Israeli and Jewish identity. And so it'll be really cool. It's going to be here Wednesday, the 26th. We've got any number of other things happening. I think that you can just check your Garrett to find out more, unless, Ronnie, you've got a specific program you want to plug.
No, but when you do the Garrett, go like this and flick it so you could see what's down there. There's a ton of things. So don't forget, there's some at the bottom.
Absolutely. So with that, we are going to conclude today, Oseh Shalom, that last line in the Mourner's Kaddish.
Oseh Shalom bimromav,
Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh shalom, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. So Shabbat shalom. Jenny and Nathan, Mazel Tov again. Rachel, Mazel Tov, and to the whole Grayson family, to Paul, to Marge, and to anybody else who is part of that mix. Congratulations to you as well. So Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom to the